My name is Zoltan Istvan. I was the 2016 U.S. presidential candidate of the Transhumanist Party, which is a political party that's dedicated to using science and technology to further the human being, to radically modify the human being and the human experience. For over 2 years, I ran a presidential campaign that was broadly recognized as the very first science candidacy in United States history. So it got a lot of attention, and we had a giant 40-foot, or I guess about approximately 12-meter bus that looked like a large coffin, because we were going around the country trying to promote the idea that transhumanist science can bring about life extension where people don't die. And what better way to tell people than a giant 12-meter coffin rolling down America's highways getting attention. My presidential campaign, in the end of the day, was really about trying to make the public more aware that the world is changing because of radical science and radical technology, and the government isn't keeping up with that change. My main goal was to take money away from the military and put that money directly into science and technology so that we can all have better health, we can all have better lives, and especially longer lifespans. Transhumanism is a social movement of a few million people around the world that want to use science and technology to radically modify the human being and also to modify the human experience. Well, I think 30 years from now is perhaps the last time you'll see some people. I think by then our bodies will already be to some extent merged with machines. In 30 years, it's guaranteed that your arm will be more functional as a robotic arm. It's guaranteed that they'll have synthetic body parts that are far better than the ones we have now. We're all going to be replaced by robots at some point. The real question is, how far do we merge with them? And people like me would advocate merging entirely with them. There's no reason to remain flesh. Flesh is an unstable system. It's a system that's terminal from the beginning, designed to die. I feel like if I can upload my consciousness and become mostly machine, I would do that. If I can become all machine, that's a goal of mine.
私の名前はジェミノイド HI4 と言います。大阪大学の石黒博教授をモデルに作られたアンドロイドです。石黒博教授そっくりなので、例えば石黒先生が講演に行かれる際、私が代わりに講演の段に立って講演することもあります。
My name is Hiroshi Ishiguro. I'm a professor of Osaka University. As you know, the Osaka University is famous for intelligent robotics, and I believe I'm playing a very important role in this university. If I have an Android, a teleoperated Android on myself, I think it's easy to travel to the foreign countries. Actually, I don't need to travel to foreign countries. We can just send our Android to the foreign countries, and Android can give a talk. So that was a very practical purpose, for creating my copy. But another, the scientific purpose is to understand myself. The United States, maybe European countries. So you are focusing on the particular functions like voice recognitions or just the mobile platform, right? But the Japanese, the research approach is to integrate more complicated things and have the more human-like robots. So I think both of them are important. We need to work together. In the near future, we're going to use more interactive robots in our societies. So Japanese populations, we're going to have half of the population of the current population, but still we want to keep the quality of life. So how we can do that? Of course, we need to use more robots and Android. The robot is just a mechanical stuff, right? And Android is a very human-like appearance and movement. Basically, cyborg is a humans, but the person is using a prosthetic arm and legs. That is a cyborg. So we are integrating the most advanced technologies for the Android. The best voice recognition functions and the speech synthesis and the most human-like appearance and the movement. So our goal is to have a kind of a total Turing test. Total Turing test is if we can feel the human-like heart or mind, through the interaction with the Android, right? Then the robot can be accepted by humans. So Android is a test bed for investigating how why the people accept the human-like stuff. The fundamental goal is to understand what human is. Well, if we can get some important fundamental ideas about the human-robot interactions, the robot and the Android is a mirror to reflect the humanity. If we see the robot and Android in daily situations, right, so people can have a chance to think about what is consciousness, what is emotions, right?
私の名前はジェミノイド F です。
This robot is a working system. There are many parts. Almost 10 years ago, we introduced this one for some human-robot interaction. And it had 2 eyes, 2 ears, and also 200 tactile sensors, whole body. At that time, 200 tactile sensors is too many. Nowadays, not so many. But anyhow, so I'm Minoru Asada, a professor of Osaka University and Graduate School of Engineering. So I'm a roboticist. But mainly we have been advocating the cognitive development robotics, which is aiming at the understanding of the human's cognitive development process by utilizing the synthetic approaches, such as computer simulations and robots. But the main focus is that we like to understand, we like to get new idea or new understanding of the human's cognitive development. So now AI is a very hot topic, and many people are working with the deep learning or the convolution network and so on. We like to focus on the much more fundamental research issues, the origin of the intelligence, therefore how network emerges through the interactions. So many people, many brain scientists, focus on some brain activity without body, but we focus on how the body shapes the brain. That is, the brain and the body interact each other. In my lab, we have several kinds of robots, but the mainly focus on some baby robots and how the humans react or interact with baby robots. Therefore, we have the original baby robot we call the affect. The affect is an Italian word to, I suppose maybe I forgot exactly, but the meaning is very cute and very small. Is a baby android. It's a real, very, very realistic facial expression. Therefore, one of the experiments is that we put the baby robots, but the point is how mothers interact with the robots. So usually the mothers or the caregivers speak to the baby in a very specific way, not same as way to the adults. Just we say the infant-directed speech, IDS. And we found that RDS, robot-directed speech, is also almost the same as IDS. It means that the robot can induce some kind of behavior or mothers similar to the infant, because so far we have cartoon-like, mechanical-like robots, but at that time the caregiver sometimes they feel difficulty to interact. So therefore, we like to focus on the more emotional interaction between the caregiver and the infant. We replace the infant with the baby robots, and the caregiver interact. Therefore, we need a more realistic the baby robot that we have designed. But still under the construction, the facial expressions, and very compliant movement by using the pneumatic actuators and so on. So this consists of artificial vocal cord and artificial tongue, and these parts consist of the vocal tract. And this is some design of the very small lips, and to control open, close, and something. And there's some artificial vocal cord is that, and then this is lung for the air, and then artificial vocal cord vibrate, and then for the air, and then so the tongue and lip change the vocal tract, and then they make some vowels or some the consonant and something, but still under the way, under the construction, not perfect yet. So the main focus is the human-robot interaction, how the robots and the human interact each other. Especially for the future, we expect that the robot assist our life. As you know, Japan is a very high-aging society. Therefore, especially the senior people living alone on the countryside, they need some kind of assistant, not only the physical assistant, but also some mental one. That is some sort of the communication. Therefore, we like to focus on how the robot can assist to help the people.
Care is a very important application for the robotics, yes. Elderlies want to talk with somebody, but they hesitate to do that, right? So robot can be ideal conversational partners. We did a field test many times already.
Therefore, in 20 years, there are many different kinds of the robots, not only the humanoid type. For example, some small robots only for communications, or some robot only physically assistants or something. So the different kind of robot is everywhere.
Yes, Robohon is actually a smartphone. And it has touch screen here and used as a just smartphone. Then I got phone call for me, and then I can use Robohon this way. Hello. Once it has shape like human beings, we're willing to talk to them. And through the conversation, robot can gather customers' data. Like he already knows about my face, voice, birthday, where I live, where's my laboratory, and also what's my favorite food and even my favorite actress. He can gather the information and they use this information for customized service just for me.
So the animism. So everything has a soul. Therefore, for Japanese people, everything has a soul of the camera or the desk or something. Why not the robot? Therefore, the robot could be the family member or the partner. I believe the Aibo is the first one. There were many owners of Aibo, but now the maintenance part is already done, gone. Therefore, now it's very difficult to maintain. And some owner really involved the Aibo is that. So it's like not simply a friend, not simply a pet, but some kind of partner or something.
Aibo was a great product, one of the greatest robot in robotics history. But it's too early. At the moment, we don't have Wi-Fi and internet.
Aibo was not successful, but they were doing very well comparing with other robots. But they couldn't develop the real market with Aibo. And Ashimo is also, right? And Ashimo is a very high performance robot. And in sense of advertisement, Ashimo is quite successful.
日本科学未来館は最先端の科学技術について皆さんに感じていただきながら、あとそれをどのように私たちの生活の中に取り入れていくと私たちの未来がいいものになっていくのか、皆さんと一緒に考える場としてありたいと思っています。そして私はその中で科学コミュニケーターという仕事をしています。最先端の科学技術について分かりやすくお伝えをしながら、同時に皆さんからも考えていることをいろいろ教えてもらって、一緒に未来をどうしていくか皆さんと一緒に考えていきたいなというふうに考えています。アンドロイドが未来館に来たのは2014年の夏ぐらいだったと思います。ちょうど今から2年と少し前ですね。で、展示をしようと思った理由なんですけれども、アンドロイドを開発されている石黒先生は人間とは何なのかということを考える、その哲学的な問いに答えるためにこうしたロボットを開発いたしました。なのでお客さんに見ていただきながらどんなことを感じるのか、機械が人間の形をしているのはどういう意味を持つのかなどといったことも一緒に考えていければなというふうに考えています。未来館にもいろいろなロボットがいます。今おっしゃっていただいたような動物の形をしたロボット、パロというのもおりますし、さっき紹介いただいたアシモもいます。それから、オトナロイドがいます。で、例えばですけれども、じゃあ本当にお家で何かお手伝いをしてくれるロボットがいたとして、で全く同じことが機能としてはできるロボットがいたとして、可愛い女の子のロボットがいいか、それともアシモみたいなロボットにいてほしいか、あるいは動物みたいなロボットに手伝ってほしいのか、そういったことを私たちはここでお客さんとお話をしています。そしてオトナロイドについての印象ですと、じゃあなんでアシモの方がいいの、オトナロイドは嫌なのっていうようなお話を聞いていきますと、多くのお客様、ちょっと人間に似すぎているから怖いよとか気持ち悪いよなんていうふうにおっしゃるお客様もいらっしゃいます。ですけれども、中には表情があった方が親しみが湧くし友達になれそうだなって思う、そんなお客様もいらっしゃったりします。でもそうすると今度はロボットとは友達になった方がいいのか、それともただの機械、もう機械だよって分かるような姿でいてくれた方がいいのか、だんだん人によって意見が分かれてきます。きっと正解はなくって、これって一人一人違った考えを持っていていいと思うんですけれども、大事なのは本当にロボットと一緒に暮らす未来がやってきた時に、私たちとロボットの関係性っていうのがどうなっているのが一番私たちにとってハッピーなことなのか、それを考えていくことがとても大事な未来を作るために大事なことだと思っています。
シリコン製の等身大の、ラブドールを作っています。日本で、作られ始めたのはおそらく2000年頃ではないかと思いますね。それ以前は、アメリカ、もともとはアメリカの発祥のドールですね。そのもともとあったラブドールっていうものとは、その現在のドールは一線を画するものがありまして、造形であるとか機能であるとか、それまでの等身大のドールとは全く次元が違うものになって出てきたので、そこがブームになったきっかけだと思います。本物の人間に近づけようと思って作っているわけではないですね。で綺麗なドールって美しい造形っていうことなんですけれども、その美しい造形がそのリアルな人間になっていくかっていうとそうではないと思ってるんです。 あくまでも人形の造形は人形ですし、人間の形とはやっぱり違うものだと考えています。将来的に、動く人形が出てくる可能性は非常に高いと思うんですが、関わりが減ることはないと思うんですが、その関わり方は変わっていくと思いますね。例えば
I am a creator of this robot. This is my love, robot. The robot's name are the Gazeroid. I named her Gazeroid, and I made her in resemblance of the famous pop star in Japan. I want a girlfriend, but nobody looks at me, so I made her. She always look at me. She can do eye contact with people and with me. Love doll is just a body, just object, but she can do eye contact. She can recognize me. It's different. It's the love. In the future, we can love each other with robot, but eye contact is essential. When I look at her, she also look at me. This is love. This is thinking about love, thinking about how to respect the object.
The robot need to understand the people's intention and desire. So in order to do that, we need to implement the intention and desire to the robot. Then, the robot they can understand humans' intention and desires. If we can develop that kind of robot, the robot is going to be more human-friendly, and the robot can understand more deeper desires. So near futures, so I think we can develop something conscious. Okay, so we believe a human has a consciousness. So if we improve our android, so if we improve the function of a robot, so someday I think we can realize, a more human-like robot which has a consciousness or mind, I guess. So Japan is a kind of just big families, right? They're quite isolated from other countries and independent. So we are quite homogeneous. We don't need to distinguish among the people. So that means that we don't need to distinguish the people and others. Therefore, we just easily accept the robot as a kind of our partners. The robot need to work with the people. So this, the robot, they can help the people very much, I think.
When you look at the changing nature of the world in 30 years, it could be dramatically different. I'm not really even sure there'll be very many jobs around for anyone that is just human anymore. You're going to have to be a cyborg, and you're going to have to be connected to the cloud, and you're going to have to use these neural prosthetics to make you smarter by being all over on the internet at all times and these kinds of things. So that's the only way you're going to remain competitive. Otherwise, there's no reason to have a human being doing a work that a robot or a person can do.
Our manufacturing system is changing. We're going to replace the humans with the android, and the human can find a much better job. And of course, another reason is we don't have enough number of people, and the robot can help us.
So the most important thing about 30 years in the future is, what does the job market look like? And it won't exist for humans.
どんどん日本の、労働人口が減ってくるというようなことがあって、常に自動化を検討していたわけなんですけれども、ヒューマノイドロボットの導入にあたってはやはり海外にどんどん生産がシフトしていっていく中で、国内でそれに匹敵するようなコストで、自動化するためには、それまでの制約条件が多い産業ロボットを使っておってはなかなか難しいので、人型ロボットで、人がやっていた作業を、できるだけ行うというような形で、新しい新製品が立ち上がる時に、海外生産ではなくて国内に戻してこようということで、効率もアップして、人型ロボットを使った人と一緒に働くラインを構築したということに。
8年前から働いています。僕はロボットの組み立て中のエラーをなくすようにロボットのプログラミングをしています。人と同じような形をしているロボットなので一緒に働いている仲間のような気がします。すでにロボットが働いている後に入ってきた人もいるので最初は驚いたかもしれませんけどみんな、慣れたように働いています。そうですね、最近は、見慣れてきたのか特に人とロボットの区別というものがなくなっていて溶け込んでいるような気がします。もしかしたら今よりロボットが増えて、もっとロボットで溢れ返っている現場になるかもしれません。
Many people are realizing that the jobs that did make them happy in the past are never coming back because of automation. I mean, if you want to compete in the construction field, you're not going to use human arms that get tired and can only lift 200 pounds. You're going to use robotic arms or either exoskeleton suits or something like that that can actually do better. I think it's going to be actually cut off limbs and put on raw arms that look sort of like humans but are actually robotic and tie into your internal structures. You're going to see a lot of cyborgs, a lot of people that are merged halfway with machines. There's going to be no such thing as taxi drivers. There's going to be no such thing as food servers. There's going to be no such thing as probably even doctors in 30 years. Robots will be able to deliver babies more safely, 24 hours a day, no liabilities in case they make an error. There's just no reason to have human beings doing this kind of thing anymore. But that will create perhaps a much freer society where people can actually enjoy themselves a lot more. But the workplace, the economy is going to change. Whether capitalism survives is still definitely up for question.
My name is George Bichand. I'm a distinguished member of the technical staff here at Sandia National Laboratories. We've known for decades now that DNA is nature's way of storing information. There are recent studies that have shown DNA that's been taken out of amber samples, or even out of the glacial ice cores that may be 10,000 years old that still are viable and still can be read. I thought, wow, this is a really fantastic going away from what we think of digital storage and hard drives to storing information in the form of DNA. None of our current electronic storage systems are, perfect. We know that they fail. We've all been there where our hard drive decides it's not going to work any longer. One of the things we thought about right away was the fact that DNA is so stable, and it's also very small. That's the other part. So what we've encoded, can be stored in a piece of DNA that can't be seen except with an electron microscope. The DNA is just so small that in something like this refrigerator here, you could probably store, maybe the Library of Congress would be able to fit in DNA that would be the same size here. In terms of the applications of this work, wouldn't it be great if you could make DNA that would store your medical records and we could then put that inside some small skin cells, for example, or something on your body that would then take that information and keep it with you all the time. So if you were, say, in a car accident, they could pull out the DNA sequence and get your medical history no matter where you were. If we really want to be truly innovative, we need to accept failure, but science is being, in funding in particular, is being pigeonholed by the inability to fail. Those failures are being highlighted continuously as things that we shouldn't be doing, but we really can't get true innovation if we don't have the occasional failure. There are probably more failures than we have successes if we really want to get that disruptive technology. So one of the important things that we have to make sure is that we're not making something that's bad, like a toxin or a virus. Is any DNA that's actively being made by a living organism is susceptible to evolution and mutation.
My name is Dr. Aubrey de Grey, and I'm the Chief Science Officer of a biomedical research charity named Sense Research Foundation. I have the great privilege to be kind of the spiritual leader, the spearhead of this anti-aging movement within biology. In Silicon Valley, there are a lot of visionaries, a lot of people who are willing and able to aim high and to think big about what the future could hold. Of course, there are people like that all over the world, but I think that Silicon Valley has the highest density of those people.
California is the hotbed of transhumanism, and of course, Silicon Valley and the San Francisco Bay Area is really the mecca of transhumanism. It's where all the startups are working on, artificial organs or, chip implants or the brainwave devices. I mean, it's all happening in Silicon Valley. So that's really, where transhumanism, its heart is. The number one goal of transhumanism is to make everybody live as long as possible. And most people believe that means conquering death. So you can actually live not just 1,000 years, but live perhaps forever.
Sense Research Foundation has a mission to bring aging under complete medical control so that people can stay just as functional, both mentally and physically, however long they live. They will be able to do and look and feel just like young adults, even if they are no longer chronologically young. We think we can do comprehensive repair of the damage that the body does to itself as a result of its normal operation.
The goal of the project is to try to express the genes encoded by the mitochondrial DNA by moving them to a secure location in the nucleus, and make them, import them functionally into the mitochondria. So for now, we are testing this allotopic expression strategy in patient cell lines that have naturally, mutations have occurred, and these patients suffer from very debilitating diseases. We have been successful in doing one of the genes, which is also one of the smallest genes encoded in the mitochondrial DNA, called the ATP8 gene. To a lesser extent, we've been successful with the ATP6 gene also, and we would like to extend this to all the other 13 genes, and that's the goal of the project. We want to test if this strategy will work in small animals first, and then we would slowly like to extend it to patients, maybe. The near future is to help patients with mitochondrial DNA mutations.
In order to extend lifespan a lot more, we have to do something that is completely different, dramatically different. And that's what this regenerative medicine, this damage repair approach is going to be. When we can do damage repair comprehensively, there will be no limit on how long people can stay healthy. And if there's no limit on how long people can stay healthy, then there's also no limit on how long they can live. Because, of course, most people die from being unhealthy, from being sick. The numbers are just terrifying. Every day, about 150, 160,000 people die. And more than two-thirds, nearly three-quarters of those people die of aging. 100,000 people a day. That's 30 World Trade Centers every day. it's just breathtaking. So to me, every time I wake up in the morning, the thing that gets me out of bed is not thinking I can increase my own chances of never getting Alzheimer's disease, or I can increase my fiance's chances, or anything like that. I think about the world. I think about the humanitarian imperative. I think about the fact that if I come into work and I can bring forward the defeat of aging by one day, I'm going to save 100,000 lives.
僕の名前はベニクラゲちっちゃいちっちゃいクラゲですだけど僕には人にない特別な秘密があるんだ僕は若返ることができるんだもうダメだと思ったらポリプに戻って123わしの名前はベニクラゲもうすぐポリプに戻れるぞ悔いを残さずに生きてくれあそれベニベニありがとうございました
いただきます。皆さんこんにちは。私は久保田真と言います。私は、クラゲの生物学というふうにタイトルをしておりますが、主にですね、クラゲの一種卵から、若いポリプを経てクラゲになって大人のクラゲになってまた、子供を産んでいくっていうのを一生実験する中で再現して。からフィールドワークもいたしまして先ほどのベニクラゲはちょっと赤くなくなってしまったベニクラゲで、取れたところは北日本の福島県なんですね。大地震があったところなんですけども、ここには住んでないんですけどもちょっと今研究で連れてきてるんですけども、はい、あれもベニクラゲの一種類なので、若返ることは私が証明しております。ポリプに戻るということですね。はい、若い時代はポリプなんで大人から今説明しましたけどお父さんとお母さんがいて子供ができてで、その子供は人間みたいに直接大人にならなくてポリプっていうお花のような状態を過ごしてからそのポリプからクラゲが出るんですね。ベニクラゲ類が若返る仕組みは、一言で言いますと、細胞の分化転換と言われております。それはどういうことかというと、クラゲというのは大人なんで大人の細胞がですね若いポリプの細胞に、形を変えるっていうことですね。突破口が開けたっていうんですかね。はい、これからゲノムも決めて、若返りの秘密がどういう遺伝子をどんなふうに読んでですねやられてるかっていうのを極めていくような研究が待ってます。
The whole field of gerontology began more than 100 years ago from the obvious and very important observation that some species have a slower aging process than other species. People said, well, that's very interesting. Maybe if we study the process of aging in different species, we will understand it well enough that we can exploit that understanding and develop medicines that will help us to age more slowly. And that's a very good idea in principle. It hasn't really had much success, essentially because aging is such an intrinsic side effect of the way that the body works. And bodies are really complicated. We really still don't understand very much about how biology works, how metabolism works.
Nature has evolved over billions of years to create a variety of different processes. For example, how do organisms change color? And trying to study those, understand the basic principles that biology uses to achieve those phenomena, we don't really understand what that DNA does. So I think further exploration into the nature of DNA regulation and structure, all those types of things are going to provide us a lot of insights that we just don't have now. And yeah, really could revolutionize the future and human existence.
人類っていうのはSF のような夢を次々と 素晴らしく叶えてくる特殊な動物なので、どんな知恵を持っている人がいるかもう計り知れないので、みんなでですね英知を集めれば、1世紀もあれば不死になれると私は希望します。だんだん徐々に若返ると思うんですけども、あるところまで行ったらですねストップできるような高度があると思うんですよね。で私は20歳まで行ったからここでもういいやとか、私はちょっと赤ちゃんまで戻りたいとか、そういう応用っていうか自由が利くようなことになれば素晴らしいなと思われますね。私の究極の夢はですね、やっぱり老化しないでいつまでも若々しい体で、脳も活性化してですね、永遠にこの生物学が研究できたら素晴らしいという目標を持っております。どうしても後戻りはできないので、どんどんいい方向に進めていってもらって、何度も言っているように進める際の基礎にあたっては自分が命を持った動物である、または植物にお世話になっている消費者である、それから死んでしまったらバクテリアに分解されて、土に戻る、そういうような存在だということを生物学的にみんな理解してもらったら社会は良くなると思うんですけどね。
One of the biggest things, one of the most important concerns that people have about problems that we might create as a side effect of solving the problem of aging is people are worried that there will be too many people.
If everybody lives forever, won't that overpopulate the planet? And the answer is yes, it will. And the planet is already overpopulated, I think, and we are causing environmental destruction. But that doesn't mean that we can't fix it. In the next 10 or 20 years, various technologies are going to come out called nanotechnology and other types of technology like this, where we can recreate the planet in a much more pristine and beautiful way. We don't have to plant trees to get forest all over when we have genetic editing. And I think regarding overpopulation, if we can recreate the planet in a bountiful way, we can definitely handle overpopulation. I mean, the planet can handle 15 billion people. It can handle much more than it has now. It just has to be distributed better. You know, the bigger question is, okay, we have a feeding problem. How do we feed 15 billion people? Well, what if they don't eat because they're transhumanist entities and they now get their power from the sun because they've used genetic editing in their skin that makes them solar powered? And this is something that people are already working on. We already have biohackers out there that are working on trying to get energy directly by plant DNA, by putting plant DNA into their skin. So maybe our version of what we think the human being will change so dramatically that it will also solve some of our environmental issues at the same time.
If people have to make the choice, if people have the choice between, on the one hand, having fewer kids, and on the other hand, getting sick and dying, or having their loved ones getting sick and dying, they're probably going to choose having fewer kids. So what we're trying to do is create that choice.
And if you're going to live 1,000 years, will you have kids in the first 100 or 200 or 300 years? Of course, by then you'll be a digital being. Will it make sense to have kids? Biologically speaking, well, maybe not. Maybe the best way is to have clones. Everything that we know is going to change in the next 25 years, and you're starting to see that change in society right now through the breaking up of the fabric of the social institutions that we already know. It's already starting to collapse. The idea that you deliver a baby from a belly, from a womb, this is a very dangerous medical thing. In 5 or 10 years, we'll have artificial wombs where you will have babies grown just like in the Matrix movie, where you can feed them and see how they develop, and then women can continue working. They don't have to take maternity leave anymore.
It's important to understand what the impact would be on the human race if we had fewer kids. Let's take the extreme position where we just stop having kids completely and just the same people stay alive forever because there's no death, no birth. Would there actually be a problem? Well, some people say, well, then if the genetic variability in the population stays the same, so evolution stops, then we will be more vulnerable to new diseases, new bacteria that evolve or whatever. There's two problems with that argument. First problem is that if we had some bad pandemic like that, this worst case scenario, and it killed a lot of people, And suddenly we have more space, so we can start having kids again, and we restore the more genetic variability. So it doesn't actually change anything at all. So the argument is completely wrong already. But also, better than that, it's actually a mistake to suppose that evolution would stop if we stopped having kids. The main reason it's a mistake is because we are now developing ways to do gene therapy. In other words, to alter the genetic composition of people who are already alive. And when we get to be able to do that well, which isn't very far away, maybe 20, 30 years away, we will actually be able to evolve much more quickly than we've ever been able to evolve before by doing this very slow thing called reproduction.
The best scenario for transhumanism is that technology continues and that the developing world catches up with the developed world, and there's just not a difference between people anymore. Borders open, no more even countries. Everything is just one giant, wonderful planet Earth where everybody can live as long as they want. They can choose how much transhumanist technology they want to have. They can choose whether they want to live forever. They can choose whether they want to remain religious. They can choose parts and pieces of the bounty that science and technology has brought us. And I think we can live very comfortably on planet Earth for thousands of more years. The dystopian version, though, what's the worst that can happen with transhumanism? Well, there's a lot of terrible things that can happen. First off, artificial intelligence can take over something very similar to the Terminator and literally say, we don't need human beings anymore. Let's just wipe out biological organisms. Another thing that can happen is that we can create some type of terrible plague through genetic editing, which is one of the foremost transhumanist technologies, a plague that nobody can control, and the planet is then left to maybe primates again, gorillas and orangutans and whatnot. Another thing that can happen is that maybe some very rich people take the transhumanist technology and they become so powerful through it and they decide they want to enslave the rest of the humans. And then you have an oligarch that rules some super godlike transhumanist beings that are half machine, half people, and then they rule, keep no technology allowed to the poor people, and that's a big break in civilization. That's another terrible scenario. So there are some very real worries out there, and I have always said that while I am a transhumanist, we must be very cautious that we don't go down the dystopian route, because this is forever. We could change the world in a negative way forever.
Science and technology allows humanity to evolve. And I do not think that this should be regarded as some kind of unnatural, different sort of evolution from what we have done in the past.
Science is really at a pinnacle right now, I believe. Last century, the 1930s to the 1950s, was really the age of physics, where we learned about the atom. And one of the forefronts right now, I think that's very similar, is the brain. We understand structure, we understand a little bit of how it functions, but we really don't understand things like consciousness. A lot of how the brain really functions. And this is happening really worldwide. There are initiatives not only in the US in the Brain Initiative, but also in Europe and across the world.
What is the difference, human and animal, right? Human is a monkey to use the tools and technologies. If we don't use the technologies, we cannot be a human, right? So most extreme technology is a robot. Definitely we're gonna use a robot and technologies more and more and extend our abilities. So that is a humans. So because of we are humans, so we will do that. If we develop the more technologies, if we improve the more better medias, if by accepting a new technologies and new medias, I think we can develop the much better societies. At least we don't kill each other, but people can find some meaning to survive in the world, right? So I think robots and computers, these are media to extend the human abilities, to human possibilities.
The ability and the desire to invent technology is natural. It's something that is naturally built into humanity. So I think it is a mistake to suggest that when we change the world in the way that we feel we'd like to do to improve our lives, then that is somehow unnatural, somehow different from what other people do.
If you lose your humanness, isn't that the end of humanity? And the answer is yes. Yes, of course it is. But that's like saying when the human being evolved from being a gorilla, that was the end of the gorilla. Well, we're going to look back and say it was a good thing to end the human race, to end humanity. This is a gradual state of us becoming a much more evolved, spiritual, and magnificent being. We are evolving into gods, and we should embrace every path along the road that we come across, but we shouldn't hold ourselves back. It's a road we want to travel down.